Most people stop looking when things stop making sense. We don't. Peel the mirror.
Some mysteries have answers. Others leave questions that last for decades. Tonight, we're opening 5 case files filled with disappearances, unsolved crimes, and unexplained events. And just when you think we're done, there's one more case. The bonus case file, the Bennington Triangle. 6 stories, 1 mystery. What really happened? June 12, 2009. Sligo, Ireland. A gray-haired man with a thick German accent checked into the Sligo City Hotel. He paid in cash. He gave his name as Peter Bergman and an address in Vienna. Neither existed. He had arrived by bus from Derry, carrying 3 pieces of luggage. Over the next 3 days, he would systematically erase every trace of who he was. He was never seen alive again. The man was in his late 50s or early 60s, 5'10", blue eyes, a slight tan, clean-shaven, and well-groomed. He spoke with a heavy German accent. He was neat, he was careful, he was deliberate. On CCTV, he was seen leaving the hotel 13 times over 3 days. Each time, he carried a full purple plastic bag. Each time, he returned empty-handed. He was disposing of everything, methodically, meticulously. He knew exactly where the camera blind spots were. The man was in his late 50s or early 60s, 5'10", blue eyes, a slight tan, clean-shaven and well-groomed. He spoke with a heavy German accent. He was neat, he was careful, he was deliberate. On CCTV, he was seen leaving the hotel 13 times over 3 days. Each time he carried a full purple plastic bag. Each time, he returned empty-handed. He was disposing of everything, methodically, meticulously. He knew exactly where the camera blind spots were. The man went to the post office and bought airmail stamps and stickers. Did he send letters? No one knows. On June 16th, his body was found on Ross's Point Beach by a father and son out for a morning run. He was wearing Speedo swimming trunks, with his underwear on top. His t-shirt and other clothes were neatly folded nearby. His pockets were empty, the labels had been cut off, every piece of his clothing. The autopsy revealed something that made no sense. He hadn't drowned. There was no salt water in his lungs. The official cause of death was a heart attack, acute cardiac arrest. He likely died on the beach, and the tide took his body. He had extensive cancer and bone tumors. He may have been terminally ill. He may have come to Ireland to die, alone, anonymous, forgotten. Gardaí launched an investigation. They traced him to Derry bus station, but no further. His DNA and fingerprints were sent to police stations around the world. No matches. The Vienna address was a vacant lot. Peter Bergman was a ghost. He had no criminal record, no passport record, no history of entry into Ireland. A forensic artist from Inverness created a post-mortem depiction, hoping to bring the case back to life. But no one ever came forward. Some believe he was a man dying alone, terminally ill, choosing to end his life on his own terms. Others think he was a former intelligence agent. His movements were too calculated, his avoidance of cameras too precise. Investigators even speculated he may have had police or military training. Some say he was hiding from his past, running from something, or someone that made him want to disappear completely. But no theory has ever been proven. And the man who called himself Peter Bergman. The man was buried in an unmarked grave in Sligo Cemetery, paid for by the state. No one has ever come looking for him. For 16 years, the case has remained unsolved. A documentary, The Last Days of Peter Bergman, was shown at Sundance. His face has been shared around the world. No one knows who he is. He arrived with a plan, a cold, deliberate plan to disappear. He didn't stumble into obscurity. He walked into it, with his eyes open. He carried his secrets in that purple bag. He mailed something from the post office. something that may have been his last message to someone, somewhere. He folded his clothes, laid them out, and walked into the sea. And when the tide brought him back, he was no one. The labels had been cut, the name was fake, the address led to nothing. The face shared across the world has never been recognized. He knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't panic, he didn't leave a note, he didn't say goodbye. He simply walked out of his hotel room, erased his identity piece by piece, and made sure that when his body was found, no one would know who he was. The cancer was killing him, but something else may have been hunting him too. A past he couldn't outrun, a secret he couldn't share, a life he needed to leave behind. He took it all with him. Everything except the empty pockets and the mystery. A man who was once someone, a son perhaps, a father, a husband, a colleague, a friend, a soldier, a spy, a fugitive. All of that erased. His face once known to someone is now a ghost. His voice once heard is now silence. His name once spoken is now a fiction. He wanted to vanish. And in the end, he did. CCTV captured his final moments, a man walking through the streets of Sligo, carrying a purple bag, heading somewhere no one can follow. He knew the cameras, he knew the angles, he knew exactly where to walk to stay hidden. He was a ghost in life, and he became one in death. Peter Bergman arrived in Ireland with no past and no future, only a plan, and we are still trying to figure out what it was. The 1930s. Cleveland, Ohio. The Great Depression had turned the city's industrial might into a ghost of itself. In a shantytown called Kingsbury Run, the forgotten people lived. Hobos, sex workers, the desperate, the invisible, and someone was hunting them. September 23, 1935. Two teenage boys were playing softball at the top of Jackass Hill when they stumbled onto something that would haunt them forever. The body of a young man lay in the grass. He was naked, completely drained of blood. His head had been removed with surgical precision. He had been emasculated. The victim was identified as 28-year-old Edward Andrassy. Not far away, a second body was found, a man in his 40s, also decapitated, also emasculated. His head has never been identified. The killer left them out in the open, like he was taunting anyone who would find them. A year earlier, in September 1934, the body of a woman washed up on the Lake Erie shore. Her legs had been amputated at the knees. Her body was covered in a chemical preservative that had hardened her skin. She became known as the Lady of the Lake. She was victim zero. The killer was just getting started. Over the next 4 years, at least 12 more bodies were found. Some were left in baskets, some were dumped in railroad yards, some were scattered in pieces across the city. Heads were found separate from bodies, limbs were discovered in different locations. In some cases, the cuts were so clean, investigators believed the killer had to be a surgeon, someone with intimate knowledge of human anatomy. Most victims were never identified. They were the overlooked, the people no one came looking for. The city panicked. The investigation became the largest in Cleveland's history. Thousands were interviewed. And then, a major break, or so they thought. A Bohemian bricklayer named Frank Dolezal confessed to the murder of Florence Polillo, the fourth victim. But his confession was inconsistent. He was found hanging in his jail cell before the trial ever began. An autopsy revealed he had 6 broken ribs, sustained in police custody. Had he been coerced, or was he simply another victim of the system? Then came Dr. X, a skilled surgeon named Francis E. Sweeney, who lived near Kingsbury Run. He was intelligent, troubled, and he had the skills to do exactly what the killer had done. Police interrogated him for a week. He underwent multiple lie detector tests. He failed every single one. But they couldn't prove it. Sweeney never confessed. He checked himself into a sanatorium. And just like that, the murder stopped. The butcher had simply faded away. The legendary crime fighter Elliot Ness, the man who brought down Al Capone in Chicago, was Cleveland's safety director during the Torso murders. He threw everything he had at the case. He conducted raids. He interrogated suspects. He burned down the shantytowns of Kingsbury Run in a desperate attempt to flush out the killer. None of it worked. The butcher had outsmarted him. He escaped justice, leaving Ness with a permanent stain on his reputation. Nearly a century later, the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run has never been identified. In 2024, the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office partnered with the DNA Doe Project to try to identify the victims. Bodies were exhumed, samples were taken, but the killer remains a ghost. For the victims, for their families, for the city of Cleveland, the answers may never come. A surgeon, a bricklayer, a failed confession, a missing head. A city that burned its poor to stop a killer. Somewhere in the dark corners of Kingsbury Run, a shadow watched and waited. He was a man of skill, a man of cruelty, a man who turned people into trophies and left their names buried in the dirt. We may never know his identity, but the butcher is still out there, in the stories, in the photographs, in the death masks that still sit in museums. He wanted to be remembered, and he got what he wanted. We just don't know who he was. June 4th, 2010. Skyline Elementary School, Portland, Oregon. A warm summer morning, parents and children filled the hallways admiring science fair projects. Among them stood 7-year-old Kyron Horman, beaming proudly next to his trifold poster on red-eyed tree frogs. He wore a black CSI t-shirt. His glasses were slightly crooked. His smile was wide and toothy. His stepmother snapped a photo. It would become the last image of him ever taken. Kyron's stepmother, Terry Horman, drove him to school that morning. She watched him admire his project. She said she saw him walking down the hall toward his classroom around 8:45 a.m. Then she left. At 10 a.m., Kyron's teacher marked him absent. He had never made it to class. When the school bus arrived home that afternoon, Kyron wasn't on it. His father, Kane Horman, stood at the curb waiting. The bus pulled away. Kyron didn't get off. The school secretary called 911. What followed became the largest criminal investigation in Oregon's history. Over the first year alone, investigators tracked more than 4,500 leads and conducted over 3,500 interviews. The evidence compiled in that first year would fill 68 binders, stacked 2 stories high. Volunteers spent over 24,000 hours searching. Dogs were brought in. Drones were deployed. The entire state was on edge. No sign of Kyron was ever found. Suspicion quickly turned to Terry Horman, the last person known to have seen Kyron alive. She took a polygraph test. She failed it. She took a second one. She failed that too. She refused a third. Witnesses placed her and Kyron leaving the school together that morning. Kyron's mother, Desiree Young, says a friend of Kyron's, his grandmother, and his bus driver all saw them walking out to the main road where the truck was parked. Terry's account of her whereabouts that day didn't match her cell phone records. She had an unaccounted 90-minute window of time. She told Dr. Phil years later that she believed a man in a white pickup truck had kidnapped him. But the evidence or lack of it would never lead to charges. Months before Kyron disappeared, something else emerged. A landscaper came forward claiming Terry had offered him $10,000 to kill her husband, Kane. He refused. Set up a sting operation. Nothing came of it. But the detail planted a seed. If Terry had wanted Kane dead, what would she have done to hurt him if she couldn't get to him? Take his son. Kane Horman filed for divorce less than a month after Kyron vanished. Terry moved to California. She remarried. She now goes by her maiden name. Kyron's mother, Desiree Young, filed a $10 million civil lawsuit against Terry in 2012, claiming she was responsible for Kyron's disappearance. The lawsuit was dropped a year later, to avoid interfering with the criminal investigation. In 2026, Kyron's name surfaced in an unexpected place. An anonymous tip in the Epstein files suggested a connection between Kyron and a child trafficking ring in Ontario, Canada. But the tip was uncorroborated. Kyron's mother dismissed it entirely. There were no connections between Jeffrey Epstein and her son. The internet had found a mystery where none existed. In 2025, the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office finished digitizing the entire case. over 5,300 documents, and half a terabyte of data. For the first time, investigators can use modern software to search and analyze the evidence in ways that weren't possible in 2010. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit has been brought in. Additional staffing has been assigned. District Attorney Nathan Vasquez said, "We are not going away. We will continue our hunt for justice for as long as it takes." Kyron Horman would be 23 now. His father keeps his memory alive with a foundation, a lime green tree frog logo on sweatshirts, hats, and cars. His mother still waits for answers. His stepmother still denies everything. And the case, one of the most haunting missing child mysteries in American history, remains unsolved. A $50,000 reward is still offered, but no one has ever collected it. A boy walked into a school on a summer morning. He showed off his project on red-eyed tree frogs. He smiled for a picture. He walked down a hallway, and then he vanished. No body, no confession, no answers. The science fair poster is gone. The CSI t-shirt is gone. The glasses are gone. Kyron Horman is still out there somewhere, or he's nowhere at all. And the hallway, the one he walked down that morning, still leads to nothing. October 21st, 1978. Bass Strait, Australia. A 20-year-old pilot named Frederick Valentich took off from Moorabbin Airport in Melbourne, heading for King Island on what should have been a routine flight. He had about 150 flying hours under his belt. Ambitious, determined. He'd wanted to join the RAAF but was rejected for his grades. He was studying to become a commercial pilot. He never arrived at his destination. Valentich left Moorabbin at 6:19 p.m. The weather was calm, visibility was good, a full tank of fuel, a Cessna 182L, a short 237-kilometer journey. At 7:06 p.m. he radioed Melbourne Air Traffic Control with an unusual question. "Melbourne, is there any known traffic below 5,000 feet?" The response came quickly. "No known traffic." "It seems to be playing some sort of game. He's flying over me." The object, whatever it was, had passed about 1,000 feet above him. 4 bright lights, a shiny metallic surface, a green light on it. Valentich described it as long, moving at high speed, sometimes orbiting above his Cessna, sometimes disappearing and reappearing on his other side. Then his engine began running roughly. "It's not an aircraft." Those were his last words. 17 seconds of silence followed. Then metallic scraping sounds. Then nothing. A massive sea and air search was launched. RAAF P-3 Orion aircraft, 8 civilian planes, ships crossing the Bass Strait. Over 2,600 square kilometers were scoured. Nothing was found. No wreckage, no oil slick, no body, no sign of Valentich or his Cessna. In 1983, 5 years after he vanished, an engine cowl flap from a Cessna 182 washed ashore on Flinders Island, 320 kilometers from Cape Otway. The partial serial numbers matched the model he was flying. Steve Roby, the air traffic controller who took Valentich's final call, dismissed it. If it was much closer to the area where he went down, you would consider it, but it's an extremely long way, to the point I discounted it. Whether the part ever came from Valentich's plane remains unconfirmed. Valentich had a deep fascination with UFOs. He'd watched films, collected articles. His father later said Valentich had been worried about being attacked by them. 6 days before his disappearance, Valentich told his girlfriend he feared being abducted by a UFO. He had also failed to inform King Island Airport that he was coming, against standard procedure. He'd given 2 different reasons for the flight: picking up friends or collecting crayfish. Some believed he staged his own disappearance, vanished on purpose. But a coronial inquiry in 1982 returned an open verdict. Listed as missing, presumed dead. Others say he became disoriented. The Department of Transport speculated he might have been flying upside down, seeing his own lights reflected in the water. The 4 bright lights he reported could have been planets: Venus, Mars, Mercury, and the star Antares, forming a diamond shape in the sky that night. But Steve Roby, the controller who heard his voice, said he sounded genuine under genuine stress. A memorial plaque stands on Cape Otway, unveiled by the controller who heard his final words. The case remains unsolved. For his family, for the world, no closure has ever come. We have his voice, we have his panic, we have the metallic sound of something unknown. And we have his final words. It's not an aircraft. After that, he was gone. His plane was gone, and nothing has ever been found. June 22, 1983, Rome. A 15-year-old girl left her home inside Vatican City, the only country in the world without a street address, for a music lesson at a school near Piazza Navona. Emanuela Orlandi, the daughter of a prominent Vatican employee, was a vivacious teenager who loved the flute. Her father, Ercole, worked as a messenger for the Holy See. She lived a life few could imagine, in the shadow of St. Peter's Basilica. She was supposed to come home. She never did. That afternoon, Emanuela took a bus from her Vatican apartment to the Tommaso Ludovico da Vittoria Music School in central Rome. After her lesson, she told friends a man had offered her a job as a cosmetics promoter. It seemed harmless enough. She was a bright, ambitious girl. In the days and weeks that followed, the Orlandi family received a series of anonymous phone calls. The message was chilling. Release Mehmet Ali Aja, the Turkish gunman who had attempted to assassinate Pope John Paul II in 1981, and they would get their daughter back. Aja was a member of a Turkish right-wing paramilitary group known as the Grey Wolves. The calls linked Emanuela's disappearance to international intrigue, a geopolitical chess game played on the Vatican's doorstep. But the calls eventually stopped. Nothing came of them, and Emanuela remained missing. Over the decades, dozens of theories have surfaced, each one more twisted than the last. One of the most persistent was the Aja connection. The gunman himself claimed Emanuela was alive, living as a nun in Eastern Europe. Another Italian magistrate suggested she had integrated into a Muslim community in Paris. A more sinister theory emerged. The kidnapping was orchestrated by the Banda della Magliana, a notorious Roman criminal organization. The mob had lost millions after the collapse of the Banco Ambrosiano in 1982, a scandal linked directly to the Vatican Bank. They wanted their money back. In this version, Emanuela was a message to the Vatican. We will get what is ours. And the man at the center of this was Enrico de Pettis, the Magliana boss, whose tomb sat in the Basilica of San Apollinare. The basilica was right next door to the music school Emanuela had attended. In 2005, an anonymous caller told an Italian television program, to find the solution to the case, go and see who's buried in the crypt of the Basilica of San Apollinare. They meant Enrico de Pettis. In 2012, investigators opened his tomb. They found his body, and hundreds of ancient bones from an ossuary. They did not find Emanuela. But the question remained, why was a ruthless crime boss buried in a church in the Vatican's backyard? Money changed hands, it was whispered, and de Pettis may have known what happened to the Vatican girl. The Netflix documentary Vatican Girl opened a third door. In 2012, the Vatican's chief exorcist, Father Gabriele Amorth, claimed Emanuela was kidnapped by the Vatican police as part of a sex ring. He alleged she was murdered. A childhood friend later came forward, claiming Emanuela had confided to her that she had been sexually assaulted by someone close to the Pope. Weeks later, she vanished. A leaked Vatican dossier even suggested Emanuela might have been sent to a London convent, with expenses tied to her stay paid for nearly 15 years. In 2019, another tip led to the Teutonic Cemetery inside the Vatican. A photograph had been sent to the family, an angel-topped grave, with a message that read, "Look where the angel is pointing." The Vatican exhumed the tombs of two princesses buried there. The princesses' remains were missing. Emanuela was not there either. Two ossuaries were later found under a secret door. In 2023, the Vatican reopened its investigation. Soon after, they publicly confirmed the existence of a top-secret dossier related to the case. For years, the family had insisted such a file existed, and had been denied. In 2024, the Vatican's chief prosecutor said the dossier would be released when the investigation concluded. But the family's lawyer called it a critical step, questioning why the Vatican had denied it for so long. In 2025, 42 years after Emanuela vanished, a new investigation was opened into a childhood friend, Laura Casagrande. She may have been one of the last people to see Emanuela alive. Her testimony had been contradictory. The commission's president said it was as if the person being heard wanted to withdraw from the scene. Emanuela's brother Pietro welcomed the news. "This is important news. They're doing it with complete seriousness." Emanuela Orlandi would be nearly 60 now. Her mother Maria still lives in the Vatican apartment where her daughter grew up. Her brother Pietro has never stopped searching. A girl left home to play the flute. She vanished into the Roman streets, and she took the truth with her. Or did the truth get buried somewhere in the Vatican, waiting to be unearthed? 1945 to 1950. Bennington, Vermont. A quiet corner of New England, wrapped in dense forests and rolling green mountains. A place where the leaves turn gold in autumn and the snow falls silent in winter. But something else lurked in those woods, something that has never been explained. For 5 years people vanished into thin air, in broad daylight, in places they knew well, leaving nothing behind but unanswered questions. Bennington became a triangle of terror. November 12, 1945, a crisp autumn afternoon. 75-year-old Mitty Rivers was hunting in the Glastonbury Mountains, a region so wild and dense it was often called Vermont's last frontier. A local guide, he knew those woods better than anyone. He had lived on the mountain for more than 30 years. When he took his gun and headed into the timber that afternoon, he told his companions he was heading down to the trailhead to find a deer he'd shot, and would meet them at the truck. They waited. He never arrived. 3 days later, an 18-year-old boy hunting nearby heard a single gunshot in the distance. He assumed it was other hunters. He didn't think anything of it. That was the last trace of Mitty Rivers, and no one, not even the most experienced woodsman, could find a trace of him. December 1st, 1946. Just over a year later, 18-year-old Bennington College freshman Paula Jean Weldon was walking the long trail near Glastonbury Mountain. She was wearing a red parka, a color that should have made her easy to spot. She told her roommate she was going for a hike and would be back by dinner. She didn't specify exactly where she was headed. She was last spotted by 2 hikers, who noted she looked confident and didn't seem lost at all. But the trail she was said to be walking had no side paths. 2 hikers passed her heading north. She was smiling. She was fine. Then she stepped into a bend in the trail. She never came out the other side. A massive search was launched. Over 200 volunteers, National Guard troops, planes, dogs, even dragging nearby rivers. The woods were combed for days. The red parka was never found. The girl was never seen again. The case became a media sensation, and for the first time, people began to whisper that something was wrong with that mountain. October 1950. 8-year-old Paul Jepson was playing near his family's farm while his mother unloaded groceries. When she turned around, he was gone. He had wandered onto a nearby road. A witness saw him walking alongside it, but nothing more. Despite an immediate search, no trace of him was ever recovered. Within days, the local newspaper wrote, "No trace of the boy has been found to indicate whether he is lost, kidnapped, or dead." October 28, 1950. Just 3 weeks later, Frida Langer, 53, was hiking with her cousin. She had fallen, soaked her clothes, and was eager to get back home and change. She told her cousin she would take the trail back to the campsite and meet her there. She was last seen near a brook, heading back. When her cousin arrived at the campsite, Frida was not there. She called for help. The search started quickly. Days later, Frida's body was found, in an area that had already been searched by dogs and volunteers. She was found in a dry stream bed. Her clothes were still wet. There was no sign of injury or foul play. The medical examiner could not determine cause of death. She was found just a mile from the campsite, in a place that searchers had already combed through. Twice. The dogs had been there, the volunteers had been there, and yet she had not been there when they looked. The disappearances continued into the 1950s, and beyond. No one has ever determined why. The Glastonbury Mountain area became known as the Bennington Triangle. The name mirrors the Bermuda Triangle, a reference to the inexplicable vanishings that have plagued the region for decades. The mountain itself has been the site of bizarre folklore for generations. The Native Americans who once lived in the area reportedly considered it cursed, a place where people could be swallowed by the earth itself. Some locals speak of underground caverns. Others speak of strange lights in the sky. Some believe the mountain is a portal, a place where people slip between worlds. Over the years, theories have piled up, but none fit. A serial killer, but no bodies, no patterns, no evidence of abduction. And why would no one ever come forward? A natural phenomenon, a sinkhole, a pocket of gas, but nothing ever found. The supernatural. The mountain is old, the woods are deep. Some things were never meant to be found. Kidnapping, but Paul Jepson, the 8-year-old, vanished in broad daylight near his own farmhouse. There were no strangers in the area. A portal, a place where the boundary between worlds is thin. The vanishings are too clean, too sudden, too complete. The Glastonbury Mountain Wilderness is still there, wooded and remote, crisscrossed by trails that lead to nowhere. Most of the visitors who hike its paths never realize what lies beneath the surface of its quiet green slopes. The Bennington Triangle is no longer a headline. The searches have long since been called off. The families have moved on or passed away. But the mountain hasn't forgotten, and somewhere in the dense Vermont forest, in the shadow of the long trail, near the dry stream beds and the bent trails and the vanished deer paths, the answers are still waiting, or they're gone forever.
If you've made it this far, you're already looking deeper than most people. Just be careful what you find. Peel the mirror.